Welcome to the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We cannot believe we are in season 4. This is our 37th episode, and so excited to fly with Laine Dunham White. We'll get started in a few seconds. Welcome to Zeitgeist Design and Production. I'm Becky Kiefer, Studio Director, and welcome to our 4th year and the 37th episode of the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. Here inside the creative studio in Pasadena, California, imagination rules and time is always of the essence. This is where immersion artists Ryan Harmon, Joanne Cicero, and the world's top experienced creators study the past and spin the present envisioning the future of location-based entertainment, or what we like to call UXIRL, user experiences in real life. The Spirit of the Time Zoomcast offers a sneak peek behind the themes. Each month, we move you, without a ride system, inviting one incredibly talented and influential colleague aboard our time machine. We set the controls for milestone moments in that person's career and attempt to unravel the mystery of what makes a guest experience timely yet timeless. And because we're live, you can type questions into the chat box and our passenger will answer them after the hour-long journey. Climbing aboard our time machine today is a former Disney Imagineer who travels through another dimension, a dimension of sight, a dimension of sound, and a dimension of mind. It's Laine Dunham White, previously known as Laine Houser and Laine Akiyama, whose many exciting projects include Kingdom of Dinosaurs at Knott's Berry Farm, the original backstage tour at the Disney Hollywood Studios theme park, and of course, the legendary Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. It's now my pleasure to introduce our time machine pilots, Zeitgeist President and Chief Creative Officer Ryan Harmon, and Zeitgeist Executive Vice President and Chief Art Director Joanne Cicero, along with the woman who left WDI in the 1990s to run a bed and breakfast in Vermont, Laine Dunham White.
Oh my God, Joe, that was mind blowing.
Wow. Wait, well, we're back. We have the time machines all tuned up after a month in the shop, and we went to 1959 Seattle.
Seattle to hear
Jimi
Hendrix, 16 years old. So amazing. I can't even hear, but oh my God, you could change the world. Well, he did.
Well, he did. And that's what's so fun about this machine. But now, Laine, welcome.
Hi, Laine.
Hi, thank you.
So wonderful to have you on your show. I know if you're a rock and roll enthusiast,
Absolutely.
like Brian and I. So we always like to take the time machine back and listen to some music.
Oh, yeah.
When we can.
Yes.
But now we want to listen to you
Yes.
and your wonderful story and your learnings.
Yes.
So let's start the time machine where?
Well, let me just say,
Let you say.
Laine and I had the opportunity to work together when I was a child. I was 20, 21.
Are you still?
Long hair, just emotionally. And I was half the man I used to be.
Yeah.
But Laine was an amazing teacher, and we just had so much fun together working on the Disney-MGM Studios, and we finally got to see each other after many years at our 35th year reunion just a month or two ago. So it's great to have you here, Laine.
Yay.
And let's set the controls for like the late 1950s.
Okay, yeah, we're in downtown LA.
Downtown LA, and your dad is he's got his easel set up and he's painting. And tell us what's going on here and why you're not allowed to touch that box of it.
So I happened to find my dad's box and I pulled it out and it's back there.
Oh, wow,
cool.
cool.
And it was when he was a fuller brush salesman, probably in the 40s, so long before my time.
Wow.
Wow.
And he put the box to use. He put all his paint materials in there, his brushes and his paints and his sketchbooks. And I opened it up this morning.
Oh.
It said, look for some props. And so I did, and I found some things that I had totally forgotten about. I hadn't opened that box in years. And one
Wow.
of them that was in there, I thought, oh, there's a newspaper article. And I opened it up, and this is what our father painted in our bedroom when we were little people.
Oh, how
It's-
cool.
It's exactly
That's
like that.
amazing.
So it's Disney characters. So it all
I love
ties
that.
together. It was in my brain.
There you go. Wow,
Wow.
planting the seed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Planting the seeds for sure. And the other thing he used to do when he was a salesman, he was a appliance salesman with Montgomery Ward. And every year they had this big sale, and they would, my mom would sew us clown costumes, and my father would paint our faces. There's the
Oh.
clown white he used to use,
Oh,
Wow.
and the blue and the red. So thank
Shall
you
we,
for-
shall we take a moment while you paint your face?
I should have done that ahead of time, shouldn't I?
Right.
So it sounds like he probably would have gone on and been a professional artist had that been an opportunity at that time.
Yeah,
I think-
definitely. Yeah, definitely had the art spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So that was the times, right? So
Wow.
he encouraged me. We used to go outside of the town into the hills, and we'd take our sketchbooks, and
Oh,
and so
lovely.
that's one of my dad's paintings.
Wow.
Wow.
And,
Very impressionistic.
Yeah.
mhm.
Wow.
Very nice.
They definitely encouraged me to explore. And I remember my mom saying maybe we should give her lessons, and my dad said, no, I think she needs to find her own voice.
Right.
Which
Which
is
I
cool.
guess, if we move down to 1962, you've got the mumps and you're
Yeah.
sitting at home kind of bored. It sounds like what happened?
So I had the mumps, and after a week or so I started feeling better, but I couldn't go back to school yet.
Right.
And so my mom, trying to figure out ways to keep me busy, pulled this box out that we were not allowed to touch
Right.
because there was special stuff in there. She pulled it out, and she pulled out a children's storybook, and she said, set me at the kitchen counter and said, just see what you want to do, just do some sketches and drawings and keep yourself occupied. And so I did.
Yeah.
And I remember the response was, was so pronounced that it stuck with me for a long time.
Yeah.
And they decided that I was an artist, that I didn't just draw little stick figures as an 8-year-old, but with masks and shadows. And so from that time on, they really encouraged me to do that.
Oh,
Wow.
that's great.
And that that's significant considering the time frame when that happened. I mean, even myself looking back, my mother always encouraged my artistic endeavors, but my father, from that generation, from the 40s, but obviously your father was different, they were concerned that, is that a legitimate way
Right,
to
yeah.
make living?
That's why I was saying her dad
Yeah.
had the talent, but
Yeah.
that wasn't something.
That
Right.
wasn't your
Right, but they were open-minded enough to see this talent in you and encourage it, which was fantastic.
yeah. Was
So
pretty-
1965, you moved right here to Los Angeles,
Mhm.
and you started high school a few years later, and started taking real art classes. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so in high school, I had an art teacher, Mr. Monalongo. We called him Mr. M because most of us couldn't pronounce it. And,
Yeah.
and I remember talking to him about going to college, that I wasn't sure where to go.
Right.
And he gave me a catalog for ArtCenter College of Design, which at the time was in Beverly Hills. And I took it home and I read it cover to cover. It's just, I read all the classes and what you could take. And I decided that was the place I really wanted to go. And at the back of the catalog, it said that there were scholarships available for high school students.
Right.
And all he had to do was write me a letter, which he did. And
Wow.
so for my junior and senior years in high school, every Saturday, my mom drove me to Beverly Hills to take classes.
Wow. Which part of
really-
town were you living in then?
Pardon?
When you moved to LA, what part of town were you in?
We, at that time, when we moved back to LA, we were living in a place called Temple City.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
So just outside of Pasadena kind of area.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
cool. Yeah, not far from here.
yeah. So you met a boy
Mm.
and you moved to Colorado with him.
Mm.
Oh, let's put on the brakes just for a
Oh.
sec. Let's move back to moving back to LA.
Yeah.
Your family vacations. Seems like
Yeah.
dad would
Oh,
take
yeah,
time
yeah.
off, and where would he take you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you know what? That started actually when we were in Northern California in Redding, which was a pretty big
okay.
thing for us. So once a year in the summer, my dad would take a couple weeks off. He was a hardworking guy.
Yeah.
And so would take it off and we would drive to LA and we would go to Knott's Berry Farm and we would go to Disneyland. So
Oh.
once a year, that was our focus. That was, something we looked forward to. And I think you might have from when I was 13, we went there and there was a portrait. So on Main Street, you could stop
Oh, wow.
and have portraits. So that was from Disneyland when I was 13.
Wow.
Wow, that was on Main Street there. Oh God. In fact,
Little-
Chris Runco used to do that.
Oh,
Yeah,
maybe Chris.
Oh, really?
Wow.
It would probably have been a very young Chris
Yeah,
Runco, but
That's so cool. Okay, so you moved to Colorado for he was going to college to be a teacher, and because you both couldn't afford to go to college, I guess. So
Hmm.
what were you doing in Colorado?
Oh, goodness gracious. I worked, we didn't talk about this before. I worked in a jeans factory sewing flies into jeans.
Wow.
But you
Wow.
know,
I guess somebody has to do
Yeah.
that.
somebody has to do it. So, but one of the cool things that I learned was when I went in to get trained, there's something called an efficiency expert. And so it's how you pick things up, how you do things efficiently, how you move the jeans and that was for me, I think I was probably 20 at the time, maybe
Yeah.
19. And that was fascinating to me that there were efficient ways to do things. And
Right.
we had talked before about, lessons learned and
Yeah.
how we gather them along the way. And that was definitely one.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So then you came back to LA for
LA.
a third time. And you worked at USC. What were you doing at USC?
So at USC, my sister happened to be going to school there. So we missed the part at the beginning that's when I was born. We lived on part of the campus that is now USC.
Oh,
Right.
USC kind of runs through our family a little bit. My sister was going to school there and working in the school supply office. And so I went to work there because I needed to get a job. And so that's why I worked for about 3 years and then decided it was time to apply to ArtCenter. It's time to get back there, time to, go do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so I did and applied to ArtCenter, went in, took my portfolio and was accepted.
Wow.
And I think it might have been 2 days later, I found out I was pregnant. So I thought I can only do one. I can't do them both. And I really angsted over it for a while. And I think that was another one of those life moments, right? When you go, I'm not sick. I can do this.
Right.
Yeah.
My
And so
brain.
you did, right?
So I
Yeah.
did. Yeah,
Yeah.
I went to ArtCenter.
Wow. But you were an advertising illustration major, correct?
Yeah, I started in advertising illustration and I quickly realized that really wasn't the atmosphere I wanted to be in. Advertising can be very extremely competitive.
Yeah.
And competition's not a problem, but sometimes it gets to be, I don't know the right word for it, but it can be difficult, kind of.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I decided that I was going to be a real illustrator. I was going to be an artist and an illustrator. I
Right.
remember cohorts of mine at ArtCenter talking about they were going to go work for Disney. And one of them being Nina Ray Vaughn.
Right.
And I thought, well, that's interesting, but that's not really what I want to do. I want to be a real artist,
A
Real
real artist.
a real artist.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
working, hitting the pavement and the sidewalk in LA looking for work didn't prove to be too fruitful.
Yeah.
So Fred Hope was one of my instructors at ArtCenter. And at the time he had a company that was called the Only Animated Display and Design Company.
Okay.
And
I love that name, the only.
Was that true?
Mhm.
Was that
Yeah.
true?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I went to see him and asked him for a job and said, you know, I just need a job long enough to get my feet on the ground and figure out this illustration stuff and get some connections and networking. And he said, well, you know, I could give you a job for 6 months. We have this job called Auto World, which is in Flint, Michigan. And it was at the very beginning of the project. So
Okay.
sort of beyond blue sky, but, you know, in the concept development phase.
Yeah.
So I went to work for him for about 6 months, and then 6 months came up and I went to him and said, so this is part of the magical musical motor car machine, which is the history of the assembly line.
Wow, is that your sketch?
Yeah.
Lovely.
Oh,
Wow.
And that's a color board from the
Wow.
marquee from the pre-show.
oh, cool. Wow. No computers.
No,
Oh,
I
my
know.
God.
So what was the job which you expected?
It was not what I expected in a
No.
really good way.
In a
Oh.
good way.
In that I got bit by this, you know, it was creative. It was using the artistic skills that we had gone to school for, but it was also telling stories, and it was about sort of the administrative part of it, the nuts and bolts part of it. I loved the organization and putting it together.
Mm.
And it just, yeah, just got bit by the bug. And
Yeah.
and yeah, and I never looked back.
Yeah.
And I was really glad to start at some smaller companies.
Mm.
Yeah.
I got to wear a lot of hats and learn all parts of the projects, all parts of, you know, what the job, so that, you know, when I finally did get to Disney, then, you know, I understood what I was asking people to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's, I mean, that's kind of how the early Imagineers were, you know, when you read about the early days, you know, they wore a number of hats. They built models, you know, they had to work on working drawings, you know, and I got a little taste of that at the beginning of my career, but unfortunately I saw, you know, become more and more about being in a department and you could only do this thing. But I think having that broader understanding, you know, of the entire process, I think that's what also going to the field gives you, you know,
Yeah.
as you're working. And then you mentioned the key word, it's collaboration. I think it takes a certain kind of person to really understand the value of, or the importance of, all of us are better than one of us, you know?
Yeah.
And embracing that and then going, wow, when we're all ticking, you know, we're going to make something great together.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's hard when you're younger to do that, but I think as we're older and we gather our projects, you know, along the way, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 1983, we are right now. We're all wearing our neon colored.
You have your mullet?
Cool. I did have my mullet in 1983.
Okay.
And so you're working up in Valencia for AVG, which I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah.
You got to work with some pretty cool people.
People, yeah.
What were you
Tell us
doing up there?
about the place and the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the place was pretty cool. It was after Auto World got to a certain point, and as we all know with our projects, it gets funded for a certain phase and then you have to stop and wait, and then it gets hopefully funded again. So this was one of those times, and I went to work at AVG in Valencia, and one of the projects I worked on was with Rolly Crump,
Cool.
who is an amazing legend guy, mentor, all kinds of stuff. And Larry Nicolai was there as well.
Another fantastic artist.
Yeah.
Love Larry.
Absolutely. So one of the things I worked on with Rolly was a huge, it was like a 6 foot tall portrait of Confucius. And this portrait, complete with gold leaf and all of this, was for a Pepper's Ghost effect in the restroom, the men's restroom in the hotel in Las Vegas.
So what Confucius gave you words of wisdom while using the toilet?
You know, I never visited it because it was in men's.
It was a men's
So I never got to see it.
Funny idea. Anyway, sorry,
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah. So then you went back to work with Fred again and
Went
some
back to
other
work.
fun people,
At a new
Yeah.
venue.
huh?
Yeah, so we went back to work with John Kasparowitz and oh, I'm trying to remember all the names. I had them written down here. But we went back to finish Auto World. And so
Oh,
went to the field to finish Auto World. Craig Russell, Arden Ashley.
Wow.
Yeah, so some really great folks. It was a small team. Chris Crump, Rolly's son,
wow, wow.
was at the only company at that time. And so yeah, so we went to finish Auto World and then came back after that, and there was not another project after that. As the business goes.
Yeah,
Yeah. So now we're in 1984.
yeah,
And we're down the street from Disneyland, not at Disneyland, but at that other park
yeah.
that Walter started, the
Yeah,
other Walter.
Boysenberry.
Yeah.
Other, yeah, in Buena Park, we
Yeah.
were. I went to work at Knott's Berry Farm, and again, Fred Hope came, Chris Crump, not Chris, Christian Hope came,
Oh,
John
wow.
Kasparowitz was there, and so I worked there for about 3 years. Worked first on a lot of graphic projects, graphic design, signage, park-wide, the international marketplace there. And that was funny because that was one of the ones I had to do all the construction drawings for. And so I learned that part of it, which was has been good, owning a home. It's
Yeah.
What
been
type of
beneficial.
project was that?
That was the international marketplace, and then I did all of the plans and drawings and elevations and animation sketches for Kingdom of the Dinosaurs.
Right,
Wow.
So
cool.
that was great. That was a
So why
really
did they take out Rolly's Knott's Berry Tales? Was it just tired?
I think that was part of it for sure. And
Yeah.
I think, as you guys know, typically you design an attraction for 10 years, and
Yeah.
Knott's Berry Tales has been there for probably at least 10 years. And I think Kingdom of the Dinosaurs, if I'm not mistaken, lasted another 10 years. So,
Okay. Okay. So what were the challenges of putting giant dinosaurs in like a 12-foot
Yeah.
box?
yeah, it was really interesting. But it also, as we know, the go away black,
Right.
that painted ceilings and things that you didn't want to see, is sort of, for those who don't know, it's sort of a flat paint that's not quite black, but is like a very dark gray, and it makes things kind of disappear. So you don't know that the ceiling is only 12 feet high.
Right.
Yeah.
And the good part of that building was the finale scene was higher. It was
Okay.
about 20 feet. So it was easier to do the Tyrannosaurus Rex and the flying, and the volcano that's in there. So it was easier to do that in that final space, for sure.
Did you keep the same ride system, or did they change out the ride system or vehicle?
We kept the ride system.
Oh, okay.
So the layout of the ride system we kept.
Okay.
Excuse me, but the vehicle, we sort of put new pieces on it and painted it and made it look more like it was a time traveling
The
vehicle.
time machine.
Okay. Yeah.
That's-
That's right.
That's right.
Now, had Jurassic Park come out yet? Is that I'm
No.
trying to why? Okay, so they just chose dinosaurs in an Old West theme park.
It just seemed to be that dinosaurs were a thing with kids,
Oh, okay.
people
Yeah.
and
What is it? It's almost like McDonald's. It's in their DNA. Why do kids love McDonald's
Right.
and dinosaurs?
Yeah.
and tractors.
And
Yeah,
track, yeah.
exactly,
Well,
yeah.
well, we both have grandkids, so we know what's the
Yeah.
fascination.
Yeah.
And you don't have, they just find them. It's,
I know.
I swear it's in their DNA.
know all the
It is
names.
in their
Yeah.
DNA.
Wow, all right.
Yeah.
So then around 1987, you got the itch again? What
Mm.
happened?
So 1987, I had worked at a handful of small companies. I learned a lot.
Yeah,
And I thought I was ready, okay, to go to Disney
yeah,
and to apply to work for Imagineering. And so I did. And I went and I met with Mike Morris and showed him my portfolio and talked to him about the things that I had worked on.
Yeah.
And I guess he liked it.
Obviously.
So he offered me a job, which I said, absolutely, I will be here. And so I was assigned to studio tour team.
Yay.
Yeah, Bob Weiss, and I was specifically assigned to Richard Vaughn and Tom Fitzgerald.
Yep.
Wow.
They were both producers at that time, for show producers for different parts of the park.
Yeah.
Before Tom was theme park productions with all the film production. And so, you know, we had talked at our reunion, Ryan, about that it was a small team because it wasn't going to be a full day park.
Right.
And there wasn't a lot of budget.
Right.
And for me, that was really great because Tom and Richard said, okay, here's your projects, go for it, just do it. Which is really, really wonderful. So we were housed in 2 double wide trailers, you know, just a big bullpen of people in there. And one of the first projects I worked on was actually probably the first project was the Dipmobile. And it was part of the backstage tour, tram tour.
Roger Rabbit.
Was it the actual one from the film, or was it a recreation?
No, it was the actual one from the film. And so
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was very much a challenge in that it's a set, you know, and that's as opposed to theme park. Pieces don't need to, you know, last.
Right.
So we had to do a lot of that work to make sure that it could do what it needed to do.
Was it animated? It was animated?
Yeah, it drove out of the garage and did it squirt you?
Yeah, it squirted and shot the dip from the Dipmobile, and and the brushes and things moved and that. And I also worked on Herbie, the love bug that was on the backstage tour.
Yeah.
Now, is this the same one that Richard Vaughn told us caught on fire?
Yes.
Oops.
Yes, and I don't know if that had anything to do with.
Okay. Okay. No
Yeah,
fault
maybe
of
it did.
design on your part. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was fun. And then I was in charge of the special effects tank, which was part of the backstage tour.
Right.
And that explained or showed how these scenes were created. And again, as we talked about before, Ryan, the technology that we have now with CGI and all of that, there's not really a need for this, but how cool, you know?
Oh, yeah. It was great. The models and the fans and the water and the little
and the dump tank.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
And that was at you got dropped off halfway through the tram tour, right? And
And you
That's
start
right.
walking.
then you did the walking.
Yeah, and then you started walking. Yeah. And so
And you were
walking.
in charge of the whole walking tour, right?
Practically.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
pretty much. So it was the special effects tank and then the special effects shop, which showed things again as technologies moved on. The green screen or blue screen map, the map paintings that people would use in films. We got to go to Lucas Ranch to get extra R2D2s and C3POs.
Yeah.
That's always a tongue tire for me. And then, so lots of really great props in there. And then into the special effects stage, which showed how Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, how the kids were filmed on the B-Butt.
Oh, right.
Oh, I remember it.
You sat on a little
Yeah.
beat.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah. So audience members were invited on stage.
Exactly. So with this one, with the B-Butt and also with the special effects tank, I liked it that it had audience participation for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Maybe it's just the old guy in me, but I miss, the practical, and actually there's still a lot of filmmakers, like Wes Anderson, Tim Burton, that prefer practical over CG, because there's something about, when you're watching, it's like, oh yeah, it feels different.
Well, the new generation of that is the volume, where they create the media instead of using the green screen.
Right,
It looks like it's really behind you.
with practical,
practical,
yeah,
so you
which
would
kind
do
of
that
a
beat.
combination of the two.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so the last part of that walking tour that I was responsible for was the tour stage with Bette Midler.
Oh, right.
And so that was creating partial sets, and it was sort of to educate the audience on how things really are, that it's not what you think they are. So a room in an apartment was really just what you needed to see. And then we created another set of a subway in another soundstage there, And we also used the old traditional backlot, the New York Street, to create this 5-minute little video.
Oh,
So you got to work with Bet?
I did get to work with Bet, not closely.
yeah.
Yeah, very interesting person, different than you would expect in a good way.
In a good way.
In a
Okay.
good way.
Oh, that's so cool. And then did that experience end in that sit-down theater with that Michael Eisner film?
Yes, and I that was not one of my projects,
Right.
but yes, it
Right.
did.
We got to see that at the reunion.
Yeah.
And it's so cute. It was that, remember the shot where Michael looks at his Mickey Mouse watch?
Oh, right. And
Mickey
then
looks
you
at his
Michael
watch.
Eisner.
Michael watch.
Yeah.
Jerry
Reese directed that,
yeah.
So good.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that was a great tour.
Yeah.
They kind of copied Universal a bit by thinking they needed a tram tour, which they
Yeah,
didn't really need. I mean, you guys had to create moments, right?
Yeah.
Because
yes, yeah,
history there.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think it was unfortunate that it had to be as long as it was. It was
Yeah.
from beginning to end about 2 hours. And if we could have figured out a way to do it, in bites,
Right.
I think it might have had a better success.
Well,
Yeah.
then there was a story that I didn't even know that we heard about at the reunion where the operators at the park determined that the walking tour was too long
Oh.
and people wanted to get out and go to the bathroom or just bail.
Mhm.
So they broke a wall down in the middle of the night and didn't tell you guys, right? Didn't tell the design team.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so that people could escape. Right.
I remember that, yeah.
Everyone had to fly to Orlando the next day to deal with,
Whoa.
who was the guy who ran Walt Disney World?
Dick Nunes.
Yeah.
Yeah, good old Dick Nunes. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
wow.
Okay, so now it's 1989.
We opened.
Studio opens.
Yay.
You get back to Glendale. They move you into now the bowling alley, which was the bowling alley. Yeah, and when they retrofitted it out. I remember that. I actually lived there for a little while
It's
as well.
bar?
No, well, no. Prior to the bowling alley becoming WDI, I did.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we are back in Glendale, and what do they have you working
Yeah,
on?
the park's a huge success, right? Like, we need more.
Surprising success, yes. And so this was before the bowling alley was fitted out. And you're right, it was absolutely wonderful once that happened.
Yeah.
But we were just a gutted out bowling alley, which is
Oh.
better than the double wide trailers.
Yeah.
And there were probably about 12 of us, I'm remembering. And we had a long table, sort of a banquet size table, and we'd sit around every morning. We'd go in, we'd sit around the table. We had some crit walls, and we had 3x5 cards,
Yep.
pens, and we were just sort of blue skying it. Just throwing up there whatever. And I don't remember, but Eric Robeson was there taking these notes, and that was helpful for him to remind us.
Right.
He wrote down.
So there was a Dick Tracy ride, right? That was one of the ideas. Right?
Tracy was one of the ideas. What came out was Mystery Writer Theater, Tower of Terror, the Muppet Vision was one of those.
Right.
Couple others. So we came up with about 12 ideas.
Yeah.
And actually we came up with more than those, but it fell out to about 12 ideas that Marty and Michael thought would work.
Okay.
And so at that time, Bob Weiss came in, who was in charge of us, and said, okay, here's 12. You guys, if anybody wants to take one of these or, feels strongly about one or the other, come and talk to me about it. And
Right.
so I don't think he was hardly out the door when I was trying to get a meeting with him. And I did, and I told him I really, really wanted to work on Tower of Terror and on Mystery Writer Theater.
Oh, yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about what those preliminary concepts were for each of those? What was Mystery Writer
And what were the early thoughts on Tower?
Sure. Yeah. So the Mystery Writer Theater was, the concept was that it was going to be a Pepper's Ghost sort of show.
Okay.
And so the story is sort of film noir, in that time period, 30s and 40s. And it was about a mystery writer who was trying to come up with a script for a film. This is the pre-show for that. And so the pre-show was surrounded by offices of famous mystery writers.
Oh, okay.
And or mystery, kind of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit was one of them. But it was, so you would see silhouettes and you would hear things beyond the glass and the doors, the sort of frosted glass.
Okay.
Yeah. This is the audience POV. So this would be where the audience would sit and look through into the apartment of the writer.
It's Mystery Lodge.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And so unfortunately, we were ahead of Mystery Lodge, but
Oh.
this one did not get it. This one got shelved, unfortunately. And so Mystery,
Cool.
yeah, the Lodge was before us. But it was really cool. It was just a fun sort of gangster, blonde
Yeah.
writer.
I think Michael Sprout was working on that. He was writing it because
Yep.
at the same period I was working on the Muppet movie ride and some of the Muppet stuff that was what was going on. So I was always poking my head in there and seeing what you guys were doing. I thought, oh, that would have been so cool. And it was very clever, that you're very Hitchcockian, that you're looking into his office, through a window.
Yeah.
And then Tower of Terror, tell us what that had to do with Mel Brooks and Six Flags Magic Mountain.
Yeah, so we knew when we were sitting around the table, we were trying to figure out what for phase 2 was missing in the park. And we identified, we were looking at the genre and we were looking at the age group and looking at the different kind of ride. And so there were no thrill rides, there weren't things for teens or young adults, and there was no television. And so we were looking at those issues and kind of science fiction or thriller kind of things. And so Hitchcock and Edward Gorey, a little bit with Mel Brooks in terms of the humor. And it actually began as a walkthrough, not a ride system, or a walkthrough that then went to the free fall, which we knew we needed a thrill ride in the park. And so the free fall is part of the research we did at Magic Mountain at the time.
Right. Yeah. Which, just so everybody knows, you went up a kind of an elevator, you came down, but then it slid out and you were
on your back,
horizontal for a while, and then it kind of swung down and backed up. So,
right. And was a
Carnival
free
ride.
fall. So it wasn't a free fall was the first part. So it wasn't powered, it just you're dropping.
Right.
So,
Right.
so we had a couple of issues with that, with the walkthrough, how we could control it. That didn't work very well. With all of those different kinds of storylines, we couldn't figure out what the thread would be through that. And then you're right, Ryan, the ride system, we couldn't really explain it.
Well, the early drawings had the run out, right? They either went
Right.
underground.
Yep.
Underground, yeah.
Yes, it did. But it just didn't make sense story-wise the further we got into it. And so when we finally landed on Twilight Zone, it was like the light bulb went off, and that was, that's going to work. We can do this. So, I mean, it's so iconic. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows the images from it. And so once we did that and we started to come up with the storyline, and we knew we were going to use an elevator for the first part, we went to R&D and talked to them. And I think that this was for sure the hardest part of what we did. The concept and the creative part and all, and the setting and it being in the studio tour, that all was fairly easy to figure out, but the ride system was difficult. And I do remember at one time the R&D guys coming to us and saying, I think we got it. And they showed us something that looked like a Ferris wheel. It was it's part of that, as you were saying earlier, Joe, the part of the collaboration and working together is to be able to communicate with folks in a way that says, that's not what we're looking for. What can we figure out together?
To get,
Right,
that's right, right, yeah,
Mhm.
because you're all in it together. That's right.
Mhm.
You're all gonna
Yeah.
succeed or fail together. That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
And so we ended up, so the Otis elevator, we went to downtown Los Angeles to ride an Otis elevator at the time. I think it's the US Bank building. It was the tallest building in Los Angeles, and it had the fastest express elevator. And so
Wow.
we went, some engineers, I think Kevin Rafferty, Chris Brown, myself, and Bob Weiss went. And we rode the elevator, and we were there like in seconds. This was like 200 stories. We were there
Wow.
in seconds.
I don't know if it's that high, but it's high. Yeah.
It's high, yeah. Maybe it's 200 feet. Maybe it's the same thing, right? So 10 stories.
No, 200
Um,
feet would be 20
Yeah.
stories. Wouldn't it be?
Yes.
200 feet would be 20 stories.
It's
It-
still, even in the skyline of LA today,
Yeah,
it
it's-
still
it's
is
still-
it looks the top, because the thing is, it's at the top of Bunker Hill.
Oh.
So that adds
yeah.
height
I
to it,
wondered
yeah,
about that.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So it was fast, and I remember Chris Brown, I think, was talking to the Otis guy who was at the top, and talked to him about how smooth it was, and that we needed it not to be. We needed people to be scared when we dropped. And I remember the Otis guy saying, "But we've worked years to take the scary out of the
Right.
elevators."
Right.
So what we ended up doing, so there are 4 load towers, which are the shorter elevators, which are Otis elevators. Then
Right.
you cross the 5th dimension and you enter into the tall towers, the drop towers. And those are actually powered by each tower is powered by a GE jet engine, a 15-foot GE jet engine. So you're actually powered down to make you go.
But how does
fly.
it give you that loss of weight, the airtime thing? Is
Yeah,
that-
so it's up and down, and with Disney rides, we had triple redundant safety systems.
Sure.
There were cables on the side. There were the cables on top and bottom to pull you
Right.
down.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's
Well, I just want to go on record and say it's still the best tower of terror. You know, that 5th dimension moment blows people's mind. I mean, that was a continuation of that era of the Epcot rides, like the Energy Pavilion, where it was just like, okay, we're going to move people through this
Yeah.
in a different way, you know.
yeah.
And then, you know, I worked on the Tower of Terror for Tokyo Disney Sea.
Mm.
And I remember arguing, wanting so badly to go back to your ride system. I said,
Oh, yours doesn't leave the
no,
track.
no, because that was the Paul Pressler era where they did the one in California,
Right.
and they wanted to do it fast and cheap.
Yeah.
And even though OLC was seriously considering going back to the ride system from Florida,
Yeah.
you know, we were living in that world where, you know, Paul Pressler and that regime had a strong voice,
Yeah.
and convinced OLC to go with the California adventure ride
Yeah.
system, which very much disappointed me.
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's still
it
groundbreaking.
was the first time I think
Yeah.
that we'd ever done that with actually 3 different ride systems.
Right.
Yeah.
All seamlessly combined. That's what makes it magical. You
yeah.
know, I mean, to the guest, it's all one thing,
Right.
you know?
Mhm. Right, right. They don't need to know.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant. So 1994, it opens up,
Cool. Yay.
Mhm.
and to great, I remember at the time, everybody was like, oh, this is like,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know, the
it's
greatest
mind-blowing.
thing.
Yeah. That's a great picture of Tim. He look.
Corey.
It's very
Michael.
film noir. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Corey and Tim Kirk and Michael Sprout and myself.
What a team.
What a motley
Yeah.
crew.
Oh, we were a good team.
So you came back from Orlando a second time, but
Yep.
not like your 5th time coming back to LA. And Bob Weiss is on Disney's America, still, in my opinion, one of the great projects that never happened, that is so needed in this
Yeah.
country. Some way to help children and families learn about our history. But tell us about what you did on that.
So I just want to say I agree with you. And when we were talking timely and timeless,
Yeah.
that definitely would have been one. And I felt so bad understanding that Bob was the lead Bob was ahead, that it was
Yeah.
going to be amazing. It wasn't going to be
Yeah.
anything that they were afraid it was going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was a unfortunate, disappointing time.
Yeah.
So I came back and I assumed I reported to Bob. So I went to Bob and said, because I liked working for Bob,
Yeah.
or working with him. So and he put me on Disney's America and said I need some sketches of these different streets. And so that's what I did for a while, did some concept sketches and things for a couple of the different streets. And then unfortunately it was shelved.
Yeah.
And at that time, Bob had decided to leave Disney, leave Imagineering,
Wow.
and start his own company in New Smyrna Beach called Bob Weiss Design Island, or BWDI.
Yeah.
So I was at that time there were major layoffs.
Oh,
It was one of those times after you finish huge projects, that
Yeah.
Imagine
Yeah.
goes through.
Yeah. It was
And then
cyclic there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
definitely. And so I knew somebody had told me I wasn't on the list to be laid off, but I went to talk to Bob and said, if I resign, take voluntary layoff, can I come and work with you? And he said, yeah, absolutely. So I
Wow.
did. I resigned, and went to New Smyrna Beach with Scott Sinclair, I think, and
Yeah.
Barb Dietzel was on the team.
Yeah.
So we would fly back and forth to New Smyrna Beach and work with Bob on, we were working on a project called Sony Metreon.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
San
Yeah.
Francisco.
Yeah.
Yep, which was in San Francisco.
Yep.
And the project I was working on was on the fourth floor, and Barb and Scott as well, was the
Okay.
fourth floor, which is based on Maurice Sendak projects. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where the
was-
wild things are.
yeah, so there was a walkthrough for kids,
Yeah.
interactive walkthrough for kids, where the wild things are. There was Rosie's Really Rosie's Merchandise, which was another book, and In the Night Kitchen Cafe.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Those were the three pieces up there. Yeah. So
So for
that was,
those who don't know, that was a shopping center in San Francisco, very close to, what's the
The
name?
Coney Center.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
there on,
yeah.
And in the kind of the way, there was something called the Old Town Mall in Torrance here for many years. So you go past shop, restaurant, attraction. So every floor, I think, had a different attraction, and it was so cool. And I
Yeah.
went to opening day and saw George Lucas walking around one of the shops. And
Oh,
I
wow.
remember the first Star Wars prequel had just come out, and I wanted to be like, George, Jar Jar, why? I
Oh,
never saw it because I was too afraid. But it was really cool. I saw the
No.
attraction. It was super
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
No one had really done anything in location-based entertainment
Yeah.
with the Maurice.
Yeah. No. No,
So
the whole thing was very groundbreaking. I remember they had the what was his name? Macaulay, How Things Work.
oh right,
exhibit, which
yeah,
was,
that's right. That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
that was really interesting.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that was that whole period, that was like when they were trying to do Disney Quest
Right.
and that whole location-based entertainment thing.
indoor thing.
Yeah.
box thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So 1997, you decide to kind of leave LA. Tell us what you're thinking, Caroline.
Well, it's like we talked. We make some life choices sometimes.
Okay.
And we
Based on our best understanding at the time.
Exactly. I'm going to write that down, Joe.
Okay.
So, yeah, so it was one of those decisions that you look back at and say, whoa, what the heck?
Yeah.
So I decided that we were going to go to Manchester. Well, I didn't decide, we decided we were going to go to Manchester, Vermont. And we were going to, beautiful place, beautiful state.
Yeah.
We were going to buy a bed and breakfast, and we were going to run a bed and breakfast.
Okay.
So we did.
Is it an experience?
It
Yeah.
was an experience.
Yeah.
It was.
Kind
It
of
was
your own little mini Disney,
Yeah,
you know,
your own money.
experience. Yeah.
exactly, and that's kind of the way I looked at it was, this is really an immersive experience.
Yeah.
People were coming to the inn, we're
Yeah.
creating this experience for them. And so it was a kind of a grounding experience too, because as we talked before, when you're in the industry, those are the people that you're with, and that's what you're doing. And so to sort of be immersed again in real life, across America, different kinds of people doing different things, having different opinions about different things.
Mhm.
So that was good. That was a really great experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
but too much.
So,
Yeah, well, because that's a 24/7 job, right?
Yeah.
When you
Mhm.
own, it's like owning a restaurant, there's never a time when you're not working.
Right.
Not that I own a restaurant, but
And it's like living in
I
your
get-
restaurant.
You're Italian. So 1999, a couple friends we all know, Jeff Woodward and Doris
And Doris.
June, moved to Manchester, Vermont with you. And you guys started working together on something back in LA.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Doris and Jeff were working on a project, finding our families, finding ourselves. And they hadn't, I mean, it really wasn't in concept design at that point. It was lots of talking blue sky kind of stuff. And asked me if I would like to produce that, do the producer role.
This is for the Museum of Tolerance here in Los Angeles.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Simon Wiesenthal Center.
Wow.
And yeah, and so this was a project that was executive produced by Billy Crystal and his wife Janice.
Wow.
It involved telling the stories from generations ago, about how generations before you sort of inform who you are in the present day time.
Mm.
And so the four people were Billy Crystal, Joe Torre, Carlos Santana, and Maya Angelou.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
That's awesome.
Did you get to work with all of them? You got to meet them all?
I didn't get to work with all of them. Joe Torre was not anywhere. I was on phone calls with Carlos Santana,
Cool.
and in meetings with Billy Crystal. And then, and I wish I could remember his name, the writer on the project. We spent several days at Maya Angelou's house with her.
Oh
And,
my gosh.
Wow.
It was
Hey, that's cool.
very cool. And sitting in her living room, just kind of getting to know her, her assistant came in to say, by the way, Oprah's on the phone, and she excused herself to say, okay. So yeah, it was a really good experience. It was
Yeah.
fun.
Wow, that's awesome.
Wow.
So, so that project opened in 2019. Oh no, let's go back to 2001.
Mhm.
You started working for Abraham Lincoln's
Family
family
home.
home called Hildene.
Yeah,
in
so
Manchester. Tell us about
Hildene,
that.
mhm.
Yeah.
Hildene's the Lincoln family home. It was built in 1903 by Robert Lincoln, who is President Lincoln's only surviving child.
Wow.
And yeah, it's a 412 acre estate. It's at the time I went to work there, a mutual friend of Seth Bongart's, who was the president there, said you should go talk to Seth. He needs a marketing director. And I'd never done marketing, but I thought it wasn't rocket science.
Yeah.
You could do this, I could do that. So I went to talk to him, and we felt the same about it, that it was a very tired, undeveloped, failing at the time,
Oh,
wow.
historical site.
okay.
And the way I looked at it was, wow, this is an opportunity to have my own little Disneyland and
Yeah.
be creative and bring the
Right.
guest experience alive.
Right.
And so that's what we did. And I was there for 18 years.
Wow.
18, wow.
Wow.
And but it was really a wonderful experience. It was it was back to the beginning, where you're wearing all the hats,
Yeah.
and you're understanding the process, the frustrating part about it was when we're at Imagineering or we're at other design and production places, there are rules, and it's going back to the mentoring. There are rules, there are lessons that have been learned that we know how the throughput and how to get people around and how to, what you need to focus on and the detail and the storyline and all of that. And so none of those people there had any of that experience. And so for me, it was a process of learning how to communicate that, those lessons that we had learned.
So you obviously weren't just doing marketing then.
Right.
It involved a much bigger role.
Oh yeah, I did very little marketing.
You became kind of the creative visionary of Hildene.
Yeah, I was a creative director and vice president. And so, yes, I did go in thinking, okay, I'm going to go in and say I'm going to do this, but we'll figure out how to have somebody else do that and I'll do this.
Wow.
So the result was, tell us about how you turned it around.
So it was when Seth and I both started, we probably had 8 employees maybe. And it was maybe a $500,000-$600,000 annual budget.
Whoa.
And when we left, we had raised $10 million to do all kinds of projects and renovations, and we had 52 employees.
Wow.
And was a multi-million-dollar company at that time.
Wow.
So,
that's quite a feather in your hat. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I'm going to back up just a little bit because we didn't mention, back when you were on Tower of Terror, you moved from being a production designer to a producer, which I think is significant.
Yeah.
Then moving forward through your career, we talked a little bit where you did go back and do some design, but I'm a firm believer that it doesn't matter. You are who you are, and you bring skill sets. Whether you're at a drawing board or whether you're in the field, whether you're in an office with a team.
Right.
So I think for the younger people that are watching this, I think it's important for them to understand. Because we talked earlier, how we were fortunate, you were fortunate, you got to wear many hats. And nowadays it feels like people get siloed. You're going to do thing, but the importance of understanding that you bring all these wonderful things that you've learned. Maybe you just deliver them or you do them in a little different way. I'd just like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that that's important, and for me was really important to be able to not only to learn all the different aspects again, so that you understand what you're asking people to do.
Right.
I lost my train of thought.
Wearing many hats and being able to move forward and apply yourself, whatever the role might be.
Right. And part of that too is that when you are young, and I don't necessarily mean just young in age, but young in the business, you're not going to know everything. And so as you grow and you collect all that information, don't expect that you're going to know everything right off the bat. And listen to people, ask questions too.
Yeah.
Ask the people who have been there.
Yeah.
I think we all know that the Rollies and all of the people, legends that we learned from.
Yeah, true. So what are you doing now? You're living in Cape Cod, one of my favorite places.
I see you have a drawing board, a painting board there. I got a lovely little studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a requirement. So yes, my husband Bruce and I retired to the Cape in 2019.
Wow.
Just in time for COVID. But we live in a community that is sort of fingered through a golf course. And so that has become a passion of mine, unexpectedly. But it allowed us to get out during COVID, to meet people, to meet the community.
That's great,
to do that. And as I started to say, one of the requirements was that I needed to have a studio. And so this has a sort of half finished basement. And so that's where my studio is.
Nice. Very nice.
Allows me to get back to art, to pure art, as opposed to directed
And you're teaching younger generations now too? You're doing online classes?
I am not teaching, but I am. So Fred Hope was the person who got me into this business in the
Right.
beginning. And I would follow him on Facebook, and he's still teaching in Laguna Beach.
Oh, he's teaching.
Wow.
Okay, got it.
And I would poke him and say, you need to do it remotely.
Right.
And he would, for a couple of years, he would say, yeah, no, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I poked him enough that he said, okay. So I'm now again working with Fred.
That's
and,
amazing.
That's great.
yeah, it's really
Wow.
great.
So now we come to that point in the program where
Yes.
we ask the age-old question.
Yeah, with all your wisdom, experience, decades of conceiving, designing, building incredibly legendary attractions. What do you think makes a guest experience
Timely, yet timeless.
So when I was vice president and creative director at Hildene, well, we all have opportunities on all projects to sort of educate and to inspire and to do timely messages. When I was at Hildene, probably was the easiest time for me to do that because it was sort of reality based. Robert Lincoln was president of the Pullman car company from 97, I believe, 1897 until 1926.
Wow.
And so we wanted to find a Pullman car from his era. So we found a Pullman car that came off the line in 1903, which was the same year that Hildene was built, that he built Hildene.
Oh,
Wow.
And it was a mess when we found it. And so we found a restorer who did that and spent 4 years and millions of dollars restoring this 1903 Pullman car.
wow.
Wow.
Brought it to Hildene, put it out in the woods. So there's a lot of forested space at Hildene, a lot of meadows, farmlands, forested, and I wanted it to be a discovery. And so we put it out in the woods with a winding kind of path to it.
After you painted it and perfected it and spent millions of
Yes.
dollars, you stuck it out in the rain and the snow.
Stuck it out in the woods. So we built an open air pavilion, had a
okay.
and which has a concrete roof.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
That doesn't look concrete when we finished it, but yes, to protect it from any falling trees or anything that was going to happen to it. And I designed an exhibit. It's called Many Voices. And the many voices of this car there are 4 of them. The first one is of the company, which would be George Pullman.
Right.
And he passed away in 97 and Robert became the president. So it would be George and Robert talking about the company. And the next voice is 1903 High Society.
Oh, cool.
Those people who could afford to ride or
Yeah.
share a car like this. It was an executive car. And the third voice,
Oh,
the third voice is the voice of the workers. So company, society, workers, and the workers are the Pullman porters.
oh.
These are the Black men who were former slaves, freed by Robert's father, not too long before.
Yeah.
And the fourth voice is our voice, is the current present time voice. And the difficulty was how we were going to collect the present voice. And so I had an iPad where people could type in their stories or their questions or whatnot. And I had a simple chalkboard that was just that photograph. And we put up some questions, some relevant questions about difficult topics. And lo and behold, nobody wanted to use the iPad. People wanted to answer the questions. And so they would pick up that piece of chalk and they would put the answers there. And people would comment back and forth on those topics. It was really interesting in terms of, it's really hard for people, especially now, but it's really hard for people to talk, but the anonymity of being able to pick up a piece of chalk and put your opinion on there. And there were never rude, there was never over the top kind of stuff. And so for me, taking President Lincoln's values. Our mission was values into action, and we based those on President Lincoln's values, which are timeless.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then to take this and put it in our time period to ask questions that are difficult
Right.
makes it very timely for us.
Wow. That's
And so
cool.
that's my timeless and timely.
Wow,
That's great.
maybe one of the better ones we've heard.
Yeah,
And timely in today's
Yeah.
world where we're not
Very
having
much.
that kind of open discourse. So
So if I go
Very
there,
good.
could we walk through the Pullman car?
Yes, so
Oh,
this is one of the only restored Pullman cars, and that was very important to us that you could walk through it. And so, yeah,
Wow.
we tell the story of the Pullman porters and the racial inequality and the low pay and the hard. And at the same time, it's a paradox because it was a very difficult job for them and they were not treated well.
Yeah.
But the Pullman porter on the cars allowed them to circuit the nation and to begin to network and to begin to see what the rest of the country was doing and to learn,
Wow.
books and newspapers that were left on the car to educate
Yeah.
themselves.
Wow.
That's
Interesting.
excellent.
Awesome. All right. Well, Laine,
This has
we-
been great. We've thoroughly enjoyed our journey today with you.
yeah, so much fun.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you for coming aboard.
have a
You're
lot to
very
look
welcome.
back on with pride,
Why don't we go
you.
see Jimi Hendrix when he got a little older?
Okay, you go to London when
Yeah.
first with the
Oh,
experience. All
can I
right, all right,
go?
we're gonna go listen to some music.
Stick around. We'll see you guys.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
You're great.
All right, you guys, another one in the books. Laine, thanks again. We're so obviously, as always, we hope you enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much to our friend Laine Dunham White for time traveling with us today. And if you have questions for Laine, stick around for our live Q&A in just 60 seconds. Go ahead and type those into the chat box. On behalf of Zeitgeist Design and Production, we thank you for spending an hour of your time with us on the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. And if you enjoyed the journey, please check out all 37 of our time travel adventures on our YouTube channel or under the Zoomcast section at zeitgeist-usa.com. They're also available as podcasts wherever you listen. And tell your friends. Mark your calendars now to join us again on Friday, September 13th, when another industry icon will board our time machine, ready to share his or her journey, their wisdom and insight into what makes a guest experience timely yet timeless. So until then, we'll see you soon.
Get it.